Okay, we're good.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the Citizens Police Review Board meeting number 275. We've been busy over the years. This is Tuesday, June 24th at 6 p.m. And we were to meet in the community this week, but given the weather and safety and all those things, we made the decision to go remotely. So thank you, everybody, for coming this way very quickly with the change. So I want to call the meeting to order. I believe we have one person who is not here yet who may be able. Mr. Greg Kotler is in DC and he's hoping to at least sign in tonight. So hopefully we will see him shortly. Other than that, all members are here and welcome everybody. So the first thing we have is the approval of our last meeting, which was May 27th. You received that probably about a week or so ago. So I need an approval of those minutes. Do I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Thank you, sir. Second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion, changes, additions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote for the approval of the minutes. Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody. I believe I heard everybody's voice and the minutes have been approved. I have, just so that you understand the makeup, those of you who are not board members, we are going to do opening remarks by myself. We're going to do executive director's report. We're going to do case reviews. And then if anybody wants to speak and make a comment, it will be received by the board's discretion and is limited to 3 minutes. So if you're remotely out there, if you can just message us in the question and answer or in the message part, would be appreciated. And Stephanie Sampton will be reviewing those as we go along towards the end of the meeting. Alrighty. I have no report, as I said. Hopefully we're in a not so crazy busy time here, but the executive report, Ms. Pittenger, able to give us that report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Good evening, members, staff, visitors. Glad to see everybody here. I know it's pretty hot out there, so we had to divert our meeting from an in-person up at the Grayson Center to just completely remote. Appreciate your commitment to doing it. Our intake thus far is 121 complaints. Michelle is not here. She's on vacation, a well-deserved vacation. Last month, we had talked about having a conversation with the city solicitor related to our investigators' access to information, including body-worn camera video, documents, things that they need to review in the course of their investigations. And as you know, the last couple of years, the access to that information has dwindled to practically nothing. OMI clears their cases by watching body-worn camera video. Our staff are not permitted to see body-worn camera video. They did have a workaround that worked fine until sometime last year or maybe a year and a half ago when that was stopped. Because OMI can deal with the body-worn camera video as evidence in their investigations, and they can close their cases, that means that there are no statements taken from the subject officers or witness officers. And that, again, is something that we had relied upon over the years, which we had access to through court order. And now they don't take those statements, so we don't have them either. Occasionally, officers will cooperate on their own. They have directed us generally to their legal counsel, who is the representative of the FOP. And our notifications go to the officer and to the legal counsel. Sometimes the legal counsel will take questions from us and ask the officer to answer, and we'll get the answers back, and that helps our investigators. But overall, there's got to be a better way to do it, and there are some bits of information that we believe by right we have access to, including body-worn camera video related to administrative investigations of misconduct, not investigations into criminal acts. That is protected by statute, and we understand that. We don't ask for that. But what we do believe is that we should have the same access to the body-worn camera video as do our peers over at OMI. For the record, though, we must remember that OMI, while they do have civilian investigators, and they do claim that it is a civilian oversight office, they're not. They have a detail of officers that are detailed to OMI. They are authorized by law to access certain information, to obtain whatever body-worn camera video an investigator needs from OMI, and they can hand it off. It's a way of circumventing the law, plain and simple. But that's just what it is. And we don't have that same benefit. So that's one of the things we want to talk to city solicitor about. As soon as we could arrange that, because of vacations, is for July the 21st at 2:00. Well, at sometime the afternoon of July 21st, and hopefully we'll have some direction. We also have to remember that there will be an incoming change in administration. And one of the issues we've had with this administration is that the agreements and the standards that have been set in prior years with prior administrations have not been honored. And it's not terribly unusual. I mean, we've had other administrations that say, well, that was then and this is now, and we don't have to abide that. We take exception to that. It is a part of what we want to review with this current city solicitor, and perhaps finally establish some kind of legacy agreement that will endure the changing of administrations, and that will allow this body our investigators to do their work in an easier fashion, unhindered, unobstructed. I mean, that's what we're dealing with now. There are a couple of issues that I wanted to mention to you, because you may have heard about them. One was an incident that happened on the north side, where there's plenty of video out there, where there was a gentleman that was removed from his vehicle, and there was some force used with him, and he was also turned out to be paralyzed. He was paraplegic, basically. And there was a lot of commotion around what instigated that episode and the incident with the encounter, what caused the encounter in the first place. So I did open a complaint into that incident. Ms. Edwards is the investigator, and she's done a great job canvassing the area, trying to find witnesses, trying to find video, looking for cameras. To some degree, it's been helpful, but it's the request made to the Bureau of Police for information thus far has not been answered. They haven't responded to our request for information on that incident. We will continue to pursue that, but as far as we can tell now, there is reason to pursue it and bring it to you in July as a recommendation, probably for full investigation. You don't have it yet, but because it did cause some public controversy, I just wanted to assure you and the public that it is under investigation. We don't foresee it ending before you have an opportunity to review it and determine whether or not it should go forward to full investigation. The other big issue that happened was last weekend. Well, there were a couple last weekend. Never mind. There was another one. Juneteenth celebration was a huge success. It drew a lot of people in its new location. This is the one that was sponsored by B. Marshall. There was a lot of controversy around his organizing his traditional Juneteenth celebration. But ultimately he received his permit, and a lot of people turned out for it, a very successful event. parking, as usual, was an issue. There were designated areas that were no parking, restricted parking, and then the usual no parking places like in front of fire hydrants and in front of people's driveways and that sort of thing. There was an arrangement over at Bakery Square that parking garage would be available for participants, people going to the event. So there were a number of vehicles towed, and I think it was the second day or maybe the second day, the parking garage access was closed off because of some vandalism and some disagreements about paying for parking and that sort of thing that occurred. The management of the parking garage said, no, we're not going to be open for any further business. And so it was closed off and no participants to Juneteenth could use the parking garage. And a number of vehicles were also towed from areas around the event. That led to a lot of criticism and speculation as to the motivation as to why were these vehicles towed. There were, in social media, a lot of conjecture that it was because it was Juneteenth, because it was a race-based event, just stuff that was just not true. Now, our liaison, Miss Bridget, has been very vigilant and has made it a point to attend community activities that are going on, community events. She happened to spend a little time observing what was going on at the Juneteenth in that vicinity and did see a number of cars being towed, but she verified that, in fact, they were cars that were unlawfully parked. They were parked blocking hydrants. They were parked in front of driveways. That the towing was not for any reason other than they were parked where they should not have been parked. The understanding that I have from individuals with some knowledge about what happened with the parking garage, there had been a couple of instances that participants were angry and furious, trashed the garage. They didn't want to pay for parking. And as a result, the management decided they were not going to make it available for further use. So it doesn't seem that there was some malevolent intent involved or that there was some race-based intent involved in what did turn into a bit of a controversy related to parking for the Juneteenth event last weekend. We're not pursuing it. We've not had anybody file any complaint, but we do tend to watch over those kinds of incidents to be sure there's not some kind of misconduct or some unsavory reason for police doing what they do, like towing cars. The other incident, which brought a lot of shame to the city, was down on Carson Street over the weekend. You might have heard. It was estimated to be close to 1,500 individuals that were unruly and disorderly on East Carson Street. Our police did not have adequate coverage to deal with the situation safely. And so as a result, they reached out and asked for mutual aid from surrounding jurisdictions. That raises a lot of question with regard to the capacity of the Bureau. The fact that we were bringing in officers from other departments is just, it's shameful. And it goes to us being unprepared, not having the capacity to meet the public safety needs of the city of Pittsburgh. We didn't get there overnight, but I want to show you what our current, well, I'll qualify that. We looked at this in, I guess it was late May, early June. And so as a result, some of these numbers may have changed somewhat. But generally, this is what we want to show, I believe. Are you seeing a calendar? Or are you seeing okay,
Chart.
the positions are there?
Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, good. You can see where Dr. Beatty, I asked him to take a quick look at the roster, compare that to the authorized strength of the Bureau of Police and see where were we really having deficits in ranks. And you can see that we have no permanent chief of police. That's, we're still on an acting situation. We have 3 assistant chiefs, and that's what's authorized. However, 2 of them will be leaving next month, is my understanding. 14 commanders, that's full. 30 lieutenants, that's full. Sergeants were down about 8. Now, there have been promotions since we looked at this, I believe. And as a result, that may not be accurate today, but when we looked at it, it gave us an idea of where we were lacking. And you can see the police officers, the patrol officers, 474 is the authorized number in the budget allocated. And we have 316 with a deficit of 158 officers and room for recruits, but we haven't fulfilled the 40 that were expected to be on the roster. So that gives us a total of 655 officers available to cover the city of Pittsburgh. That alone is bad, but it's also nurtured with the fact that of our patrol officers, they have gone to 4 10-hour days. So for every officer, that's the loss of another day of service. So the whole management of the Bureau of Police, their capacity has just been abysmal for the last several years. It's not this particular administration's fault 100%. We can go back a couple of years without giving too much to the circumstances of the time, which would include our resources, what we had available to us, that sort of thing. But I think the last administration had reserved for 2 classes to come on. Those classes were never put on. And I think we had 900 officers allocated at that time. And then it went to 850, and then it went to what we have currently as an authorized number of 800 officers. Now, how much of that is for real, what we need, and how much of it is to accommodate the dwindled number and to just make it appear that we're not in as bad shape as we might consider being. I think a class recently came out of the academy that would offset by 24, I think, or 26 officers coming in. But we have a whole bunch retiring next month. So this situation is not something that happened overnight, but it's also of our own doing as a city, because we did not have good planning. We didn't have a projection of need and how are we going to meet the need in the future go back a couple administrations. How did we project the need and how were we going to fulfill it? And here we are. This is what defunding the police looks like. And as a result, our officers could not handle a situation that they were confronted with the other night on Carson Street. And they had to ask for other officers to come in to help allay the situation. That's just inexcusable. So I don't know that there's anything we can actually say or do about it other than acknowledge that there's a systemic issue here and that we have to have a sense of sophisticated or mature or at least professional planning so that we can get a hold of the situation and project into the future and prepare to deal with what the needs will be, rather than just letting it go the way it has been going. The other incident, at the same time, I understand, over in Zone 5, there was a similar incident with juveniles, 200 to 300 juveniles that were gathered, and they were traveling in a bit of a pack. And as a result, the officers from Zone 5 had to ask for assistance from officers from Zone 4. And then they were considering having to reach all the way down to Zone 2 to help manage this group, to herd them along, to get them to break up without any incident. And my understanding is there was no incident. There wasn't anything that was critical, but it presented the potential. And those officers were not equipped in that zone to handle what was presented in their zone. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that and assure you that we're paying attention to it. Sometimes our work is not limited to an individual act or an individual officer, but rather the systemic issues that influence the officer's conduct. And is there something that you should be thinking about doing or making recommendations related to the overall operations of the Bureau of Police, which you are, of course, empowered to do under the enabling ordinance.
Beth, we have Mr. Robinson with his hand up.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Pinger. I guess thinking of what our role is or what capacity we could play, obviously I don't think we could do anything what's budgeted or whatever. I don't know if we can do anything about recruiting. I'm not sure how you get more people want to be cops or want to come to Pittsburgh. But that you mentioned about that number, the authorized number,
Yeah.
and that would obviously, I think that might, I don't know if that's a policy. As you mentioned, like, well, how do we get to that number? Is that a number that's based on some assessment? Like, and are we able to have an inquiry into that? Either one, because I don't know if we're in a position to make a recommendation. I think I heard Mr. Williams talking about past numbers and stuff like that. But I'm just curious, like, is there, like, how do a municipality do an objective assessment of the need for overall officers, the need for, I guess, officers for patrol? And then if so, I mean, as part of an investigation, could we then offer a recommendation, which, again, not sure what weight that would carry, but again, whether the mayor got to go to city council and they're looking at budget, like, hey, we said we only need 800, but per this inquiry, they said we should, with a city our side, our population, have 900. And again, I don't know if that helps anybody or what that would leverage, but it just seems like, I don't know, is that an avenue that we would want to play, and should we?
We can do the research that would produce those equivalents, Mr. Robinson. There are some standards. There are some, if I can back up, you might recall there was a study done that purported to tell the city what their standards, what they needed. So I think an $80,000 study, something like that. And that report, 500 and some officers is what that report said was all we needed in the city of Pittsburgh. At the time, it was Chief Scarato, and he did not agree with that. And as I recall, I don't think the mayor agreed with that number either. But it was a study that would cost a lot of money, and it didn't seem to have a lot of credibility behind it in terms of the localization of the needs in comparison. We've lost population. That feeds into the standard of assessing what do you need. But in Pittsburgh, it's never truly been assessed with consideration of the commuting public. Now, since COVID, that's changed too a little bit. But traditionally, where we would have maybe 400,000 or 500,000 people downtown and coming into the city every day, that they had to meet the needs of, 300 of them lived here, and like a couple 100,000 would come and go. We need to provide the safety for all of those people, but that was never really built into what were the needs for law enforcement purposes. So there are studies that are out there. There are standards, comparable cities. When council was considering the salary for the chief of police position, I did prepare a report for them that was just generally a comparative for chiefs of police salaries across the country with similar numbers of similar sizes of departments and populations. So I could send that out to you all too, just as a little bit of an intro into what all that looks like and what kind of population to officer ratios really exist. The crime also figures into that. And I think that Miss Dixon might have a particularly contemporary view of that kind of process too, which would be helpful for the board, or at least for me to go about doing some kind of research for you. I don't see Miss Dixon. Is she still here?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm having a technical problem with the camera.
Okay. Well, I don't mean to misspeak, but I'm asking if you would be a resource that I could bounce some of this off of.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're the changes that the Bureau has gone through, while they're still trying to develop their own identity, their own cultural, organizational culture, because that was busted down about 12 years, 10, 11 years ago when Chief McClay came in and just retooled the whole place. And rebuilding has been interrupted several times. And as you know, we have an active chief of police, again, 5 of them in the last couple of years. It's not a way to develop a cohesive, proud department. The standards were also reduced for admission to the city's academy. They've gone through a lot of change. I don't think I mentioned to you that the mounted patrol unit, it appears the council is really endeavoring to keep them. They were supposed to go away at the end of June as a cost-saving measure. The discussion was that $500,000 was what it cost to maintain the stable of 6 horses, and that was too much money. Like $500,000 is so much money in the city of Pittsburgh. When you look at how we spend money in this city, that's hardly a big deal. But the people who run the horses and know the expenses associated to them have indicated, unless you're building in the salary of the officers detailed to the mounted unit, it doesn't cost near that. So that was a hot potato for a while through the spring. The administration wanted to eliminate the unit. Some members of city council were second thinking that, and I understand that council now is working on legislation that will keep the unit as a mounted patrol unit in the city, which would be a good thing. It's a phenomenal tool for public relations. It can be a force multiplier, as they say, but they have a huge presence when crowd control needs arise, or there's circumstances that they make a difference. And it's a unit that has a legacy attached to this police department. The other unit that had been dispersed, excuse me, was the motorcycles. Again, the motorcycle unit was one of the anchors of the Bureau of Police. They pride themselves. They're professionals. They have a role to play. Traffic control, motorcades, things of that nature. Like, they do have a real role to play. They're also professional. They also trained. They have the rigors of professionalism that they adhere to. They, in many ways, present a standard that's of high excellence. And you take them, you take the mounted unit, you take the SWAT unit, the specialized units that have the rigors of training and professionalism behind them. They set a standard that others try to rise to, and they've been absent for a couple of years. Putting those units back in place with reasonable supervision and all of that, that's assumed. They become anchors, and that helps to develop that institutional culture and that standard of expectation. So those two things seem to be coming back into play. The motorcycle unit was disbanded in what could have been political retaliation because of the fiasco of them going to Butler and participating in a Republican nominee for president's rally. When that episode happened, they were then disbanded and deployed to the various zones. But now they're back together again. So we'll see how that goes. But even those specialized units, Mr. Robinson, We'll include a look at them to see how do other places do this.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions around this? Okay, thank you.
There's one other item that I did ask Dr. Beatty to address. After the Jordan Miles incident in 2010, then Councilman Burgess set forth a public agenda, the Jordan Miles Public Safety Agenda. And one of the elements of that agenda was an amendment, a requirement and an amendment to the annual police service report. And among other elements, one of the items was a disclosure of the civil suits brought against the Bureau of Police, well, the city and the Bureau for Police Actions, that were open in that reporting year and were closed in that reporting year and remained open during that reporting year. And that was an effort to allow the public to see what else is going on here. What are we spending money on? And what are the police doing that's showing up in other realms? So I asked Dr. Beatty to do a quick down and dirty look and see if in the years from 2020 to 2024, if they had adhered to that. And I would ask Scott if you would be willing to just give a summary of what you found, please.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All
Yeah.
right, great. I just want to, if I could share my screen for just a second, I'll. See if it lets me. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Does it look like a PowerPoint presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, great. What I was tasked to do was look at the reporting from 20 to 23. I moved to the 2025 just because I was curious, but I will tell you from 20 to 23, there was one case was reported. It was a conglomerate of multiple cases. A settlement of 392K was reported. 464 was the overall number, but this was all that was reported throughout 20, 21, 22, and 23. The Bureau's report for 24, for whatever reason, is not released at this point. So I was kind of curious to see just this. Now, what I did is I went in and did a search of Pacer, Justice.org, and the local news. And I uncovered these 7 lawsuits from 2020 to 2024. None of these were reported by the PBP in their annual report. That the numbers that are there to date are about 8.29 million. That will go up because several of the cases have not been finalized at this point. So just a brief overview, some of them, the first one, L versus City, that was 2 brothers. It happened back in 2015. It was just settled. It's in the process of being settled this year, or in 2020, and it has been settled. It was 2 young men. One of them had a pack of cigarettes. They were, assaulted by the police, more or less, when you read the court case. And as you go through them, you can see Rowley versus the City. That's an undisclosed amount ongoing. Those were people protesting and they were shot by rubber bullets and injured. Some of them are going to be more serious. A gentleman lost an eye by being struck with a rubber bullet at a George Floyd protest. Of course, we have the Rogers case. It was settled for $8 million. That was unreported in the 2021 APB Bureau report. And then the last 2 you see there, it was a fatal shooting by an officer. That's going to cost the city some money. The man was unarmed, came to his front door, and the police officer shot him dead in his own front door. And the last, that was a man that had his 2 front teeth knocked out by a rubber bullet at a protest. Again, that was settled for 200,000, but these are all going to add up to much more. So the liability is going to be financial, but also it's a loss of public trust, because when we see these cases that we know they exist from reporting, looking in the court dockets as well as the media, but they're not reported by the city of Pittsburgh, it becomes troublesome. Any questions? I tried to make that as big as I could on there.
So, question on just on the reporting end, the complaint might have been, or the lawsuit might have been filed, or the complaint might have been filed in one year, but the payouts might have been a different year. Are you reporting these payouts as when they occurred or associated to when the case was filed?
Great question. It's when the file, there are two different things here. It's when the lawsuits are filed and when there is a payout. And that was the instructions in the borough report.
Okay.
And that was my question too. I was thinking, well, maybe it was I was speculating why they wouldn't report these. Maybe because they were filed and like one was 2015 and was settled in 2020. So maybe in their mind it was 2015. But then
Yeah,
there's others.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I'm saying there are others that fall within that continuum, so it didn't make sense.
Costly, but with endurance.
What
Oh.
what was how did that initiate? You mentioned Ms. Bettinger, where they said is that legislation that said they needed to report that, or was it an amendment? I think you said.
It was legislation by council that amended the requirements of the annual police service report. And it was put under the duties of the public safety chair.
Okay. And
Not
nothing
chair, I'm
obviously.
sorry, director, the director of public safety. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
All right. And nothing has obviously been amended since then to change that requirement. So we don't know. Do we know when it seemed to stop? Like what was, oh, you said they still reported, but only one. Is that what you said?
Seems like 2020, they stopped after 2020, it seems like.
Okay.
But the legislation hasn't changed, correct?
That's correct. And if the lawsuit was filed in 2015, but it was paid in 2022, it should show up in the 2022 annual service report. That was the purpose of the of the requirement, so that we would have an ongoing, active sense of what civil suits we had outstanding related to police.
And in this research, it also should be included the officer's name that was accused. There should also be the dollar amounts and the infraction, but that didn't appear either.
So that's been deducted from the records?
It's just not there. It's very, very vague what's in there.
Okay, but you're saying that if they weren't putting it in since what year?
Seems like 2020, there was nothing reported after in 21, 22, or
Okay.
23, and 24 hasn't been released yet.
Because I'm looking at 19, and one of the ones you mentioned, I'm pretty sure I do remember seeing in an annual years. So interesting. Okay.
Yes, obviously, in addition to raising that question with the Bureau, I'm curious, would City Council need that information? I don't know if the controller would need that information. Yeah, I don't know. Just trying to think who. Obviously, they made the amendment for a reason. I don't know who sponsored that, but I'd imagine whoever made that or started that amendment probably would want to know that whatever they were looking for back then, specifically how much we're paying out, is not being reflected as it was legislated.
Can you see it in 21? Go back and take a look at it. It's interesting.
Reverend Burgess is the one who sponsored.
It looks like it's in the 22 report as well. Okay.
And you're saying that the names are in the 22 report and
Hold
the
on.
dollar amount?
I'm working on a phone trying to scroll down to it real quick.
Yeah.
The bifocals are betraying me right now. Give me a second. Yeah, it shows the number of officers involved, how many cases, claims, total number of claims filed. settled. It shows the dollar amounts. It gives a real quick little blip of who was. Yeah, it says who was named in the case.
Can you see? Because when I was looking, I didn't find. I printed them and tore through those things.
Yeah, just Google just do a quick search Pittsburgh Bureau of Police annual reports, and it'll give you the whole list.
Okay.
It actually comes up under is it pittsburghpa.gov. Oh, come on, show me the rest of it. Yeah, you're just Google. It's easier because this thing's rather long. Slash
That's what
safety
it
slash
was.
police slash yeah. But it'll take you to the home page and it'll pull up everything. And I'm sorry, I'm aware of that because of the prior work I had with consent decree and then at the academy when that other legislation came out. So I always kind of took a look at the annual reports. I thought it was in there. Yeah, it's in 23 too.
I apologize. I'll re-review them.
Yeah.
So are we saying now that the credibility has to be looked at?
If there was actually cases found, yeah, you're gonna have to look at what was believed to be omitted, because the L case I was familiar with, and I was pretty
Yeah.
sure I'd seen that summarized a couple times. But yeah, it's just a question of where things are. Like technically, right now, I thought the 24 report should have already been released by now. To be honest, I'm not sure what the timeline is, but I thought it was early in the year they would try to get it out.
I've checked a few times and I haven't found it.
Yeah, it's not. It is definitely not there.
No.
Yeah, the summaries. Yeah, they're there. It might be getting a little. I don't know. I'm trying to work off my phone, so sorry about that.
And we handled the L case too.
Yeah.
Now I'm confused. Scott, you're reporting that you did not find the listings in the annual reports, or you didn't find the annual reports?
No, I'm listening. The 7 cases that I had identified from the media were not in the reports. But then I was scanning them, so I could have missed one. But the 7 that I drew from Pacer, the media, I did not see them in the annual reports.
Okay. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. If you look, he put the link in the chat.
Thank you.
It's okay. It was hard to find it on your mobile.
I'm still trying to see these things.
Are we good now? Or is this good?
Yeah, hang on. Just give me, I'm going to take what was one of the cases?
From which year?
Just give me one. Throw me one, like prior to 22.
Rogers versus City of Pittsburgh.
So I guess just for a second time, it sounds like we probably want to just go back and double check to see if these are on, if they're, maybe the list is not as extensive as Scott had initially thought, but even if there's other ones that aren't in there, there's still omissions. It just sounds like we probably got to get that cleared up on our side before we go ahead asking questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so
Maybe by next month.
Yeah, we'll come back next month and our process will be looking at what was found out of Pacer from the federal court database. You also looked at council resolutions, didn't you, Scott?
I did, yes.
Yeah, somebody mentioned about council knowing, yes, they have to approve all of these settlements. And so he was cross-referencing this case to a council action.
Yep.
And then whether or not that information is reported in the year, I guess that would be the year that council
Paid out.
authorized the
Yeah.
resolution.
Right. And there were, just so you know, there were hundreds of these because in the filings in Pacer, there were people in jail trying to sue for $200 trillion. And I mean,
Yeah.
there were crazy things in there that I had to sift through. And so that I came down with this. But I'll double check all of these with the,
Okay, and we'll go back and we'll cross it to council resolutions, and then they should appear in the annual report of the year that council resolved it or authorized it, right?
Right. It should
Okay.
be, right? If
Yeah,
what
that's
it says.
probably the end. Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Awesome. Thank you, Scott.
well, thank you.
And that concludes my report for you this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Pittenger.
Thank you.
Or do we have any unfinished business? I have none. Anybody have any new business? And just remember that it may be introduced but not deliberated. So any new news? Hearing none, we are
I
I
now.
do.
Okay, I'm sorry, didn't see something. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
I didn't know if it's categorized as new business, but maybe just as a discussion point. I'm not sure if everybody was aware, but I do know Executive Director Ms. Pittenger made a statement in regards to the new Citizens app that has been released in the city of Pittsburgh, in regards to notifying members of the public of critical incidences that happens around the city, whether it be police, fire, or etc. I didn't know if we should have a discussion around it or if we could find out any more information about it. But I do know, at least my opinion, a concern of mine is because I have downloaded the app and I have been on it for a little bit of a time now, it was two shot spotters over here in my neighborhood in Beltsuva area where the app literally pinged me to notify me of the shot spotter alert. But the concerning thing, it also tried to incentivize the user to go to the scene of where the incident occurred. And I didn't know if we could possibly find out some more information as far as the company's intention. Is it to get more people to, go to incidents that happen across the city so they can, live stream it or record the incident? But just a concern as we are related to, we're down officers, and the potential of putting people at risk of trying to incentivize them to go to scenes or incidents.
And
Thank
you're
you.
saying this is a group?
Say it again.
You're saying this is a group or an app of
Yeah. Yeah, this is an app. Ms. Pittenger, maybe you can provide more context to this. But it's just a concern because it came up on my phone again as an example. Of it literally, I guess they're monitoring the radio waves of the police channel, and then they're uploading it to this app, which would then notify the residents who are closest to it, and they're trying to incentivize them, say, hey, if there was a shot heard down the road, go see and, take your phone, live stream it, see what's going on the scene possibility, and we will pay you for you going and doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for bringing that up. I was asked about this app a couple weeks ago. They were launching in the city. They were formerly known as Vigilante, I believe was their former name. It's a project that was seeded out in California. You may recognize the name Peter Thiel, Silicon Valley billionaire. He gets involved in a lot of contemporary or, progressive kinds of things that have a tendency to grow and develop. But at any rate, it was seated there, and they had some problems. They had some internal problems with alleged discrimination. They just had a little bit of a problem getting on their feet. As a result of some of that controversy, they changed their name to Citizen App, the Citizen App. And its intention originally, they did a trial run in California where they had a connection with a private security company. And the deal was, if you call or you do your thing on the app, this private security, these people will come and they will help you. It's like it's like private policing is like a principle underlying it as a test. I'm not saying that's what they're doing now, but that's how they kind of evolved into now where they're, as Mr. Davis described, monitoring and somehow sending out alerts as to critical incidents, police encounters, and as he described, having people go to those scenes and pay them if they produce video. My comments were fairly negative about them because if you want to be an informed citizen, you have lots of different ways you can do that without paying for a subscription to somebody. You know, ShotSpotter, that's kind of hard to find a place that's going to give you the ShotSpotter notifications, but Pulse Point, the radio scanners, the neighborhood apps that are out there, the Ring apps that are out there. There are many ways that you can be an informed citizen as to what's happening in your neighborhood without going to a proprietary app to do that. I know that the last I heard, and the Bureau of Police has not ever been contacted by them to establish any kind of cooperative arrangement or agreement. It undermines public safety, in my opinion.
Dangerous.
Opinion.
Very dangerous to send somebody, you hear a shooting, go. I mean,
it's to me, it is a very dangerous app. You know, and it's like wrapped up in this, oh, you can be an informed citizen, you can do all these wonderful, you're putting yourself in danger, you're putting the officers in danger, and you're putting the participants in an incident in danger. And whether or not this, I mean, the undermining can go on so far. Now, this is hypothetical, but it can go on so far until such time where public policing becomes less desirable, not supported, and private policing and vigilantism becomes the norm. And that's where it becomes a social engineering thing that I think is very dangerous. I'm curious, Mr. Davis, I won't go near it. I won't go near it. I'm not sure. I don't know what to say about it other than I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's dangerous. And they're making money on it, and it's all public information. And then they're setting people up to go out there and put themselves in harm's way for what?
So is it, I guess based on the former name and kind of how you described it, that seems to be one view of it. Is there a countering view of, oh, this is like you get our weather alerts now, you know, whenever there's a storm, we all get an alert that this comes to us regardless of, well, I don't know how that happens. We all know that there's a storm coming, but is it also supposed to be like on that front that, oh, like I know we try to set up stuff in our work at home, but if there's a shooting, this like with our own network, we try to let people know, hey, don't go over to this block right now. But literally, that's like, don't go there, not go over there, do something, check it out, on look, whatever. Is that part of Mr. Davis? Is that how you perceived it?
So I just want to be clear. I downloaded out of my curiosity of experimentation of just trying to figure this out, right? So as I'm looking at the app, the app, it literally lists like all the registered sex offenders that are near you or in the surrounding area. It has the ability by default, it shows every incident, whether it's police, fire, or any other type of alert, like a fight breaks out or something that pops up on the app. It's like geotag located. But again, if you're the one who's closest to it, as again, like I'm the example, like I live in Allentown, obviously, when they said that they heard 2 shots over in Beltsuver, they notified me while I was at home and said, "Hey, we'll pay you to go to the scene and record it." You know, and
Oh, okay. I missed that part of your story.
yeah, I'm sorry. You know,
No, okay, that's clearly different than don't go there, avoid
Right.
this because it's dangerous.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
it
yeah,
was
okay, that's
a
pretty
literal
explicit.
it was literally enticement, you know, where it said we'll pay you, and then they said we'll also give you like badges if you continue to do it.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like
oh,
it's like
wow.
trying to build it up. You know, again, this is what I am seeing, you know, of this app. I also see the risk and potential of the harm of, again, putting just regular folks at a critical scene incident because they're trying to be paid, you know, for this, and also understanding that we don't have the capacity, you know, for if it was an officer, right? An officer got to go deal with a critical situation and got about 15 to 20 people now showing up at the scene trying to record because an app then told them to get here. I'm just trying to find, you know, as far as what we can do, maybe to, you know, trying to find some more clarity. I don't know, put an advisory statement out against it. But, you know, I think this has the potential risk factor of an increasing a volatile situation that already is a volatile situation when we're talking about a critical incident that just occurs naturally. This is instigating and fueling the fire.
What do they call that? Your ability to be a small business owner and do what you want to do. However, you know, I don't know if as a board we can control what entrepreneurs are out there doing. But I would hope, you know, this falls in the category to me of shams and scams. And, you know, we tell older people, you know, Department of Aging, you know, Social Security doesn't email you, they don't call you, blah, blah, blah. Right. So I don't know if we could monitor every crazy, you know, Silicon Valley person it wants to be a vigilante. Yeah.
I guess I also think, even to your point, Daylon, about putting a statement out, in a way, I think that just promotes it.
Yep,
even if we're saying this is a bad thing, people are like, what is it?
Yeah.
And people that don't know, some of them are going to be inclined to
do it, to get on it and make a couple bucks, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where our position could be, other than that's one of those, any news is a good news for on that side of it, and I don't know if I want to be part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think until such time, like it really presents itself, like the information is the information. It's the behavior of the individuals with the information that poses the problem. And so I think from the board's perspective, when we have something like this, as Dalen was mentioning, like people being sent to the scene or whatever, I think it's just we may get complaints about conduct towards the public and about crowd control or managing the scene. And I think it's just wise for us not to. I believe in the thoroughness of how we do investigations. I just mark this as another thing we have to navigate if there are other complicating factors here. And that's what I'm saying is, like, if there are a bunch of people that I'm thinking in the eyes of a police officer trying to manage a scene, if I got a crowd that's running there because they're all excited about whatever the type of call is that was generated by this app or this type of information, it just complicates the scene, as Beth was saying, with officer safety and public safety at large. But if these complaints come about back and forth, and again, drilling down on the details, I think it's just an awareness level. Like, it's going to put stress on the system and stuff like that. And not that we excuse the behavior. I'm not suggesting that. We expect our officers to operate with integrity. I just want to be I park these type of things when I'm thinking about the challenges that the officers have to navigate. And this would be another one of those challenges.
Mm-hmm. And let's hope this is one of those things that is, people just say, I'm not paying you for this. You know, I'm not paying this app.
Yeah,
And
it gets
you
to
had
be
to pay
some of
for it. I'm sorry.
about and just in a complaint. I'm thinking drilling down. I'm getting a little more granular from where our conversation was. Like where would the board get pulled in? And I think that's where it's going to come in. Like when you're trying to establish boundaries while you're handling business, we have some people that really press those boundaries, and you tell them to get back, and they're trying to film and this, that, and the other. That's just more complicating factors here with managing the scene.
It's just nuts.
Yeah, you add money to anything and the person really wants to get access, so it could cause complaints.
And, I guess if we get those complaints, then we investigate and do what we do.
And we also know that there are numerous outlets of that information that people have free access to.
Alrighty, thanks for asking that question, Dalen. This led to a very interesting discussion for sure. Any other new business?
Yeah, just something to share. I don't know if folks seen, one, I guess if folks are aware that there is the city has a Stop the Violence Fund, which percentage of, I guess, the Bureau's budget goes to this fund, which supports community organizations and works towards violence prevention. And apparently, I guess there is a current discussion now, City Council looking at an amendment to, I guess, put some more structure behind that. I guess there were some questions about it. Full disclosure, my organization has received those grants to do some of our work, which I highly support. I think the whole idea of the premise of the fund is great. But I know Word is looking at it from a work side of like, all right, are these questions about it going to make it go away, which I don't think would be a good thing. Because I do know what our work is. I know some of the partners that we work with who also receive those grants do good work. And I think it has the outcomes that we were looking for, or the council was looking for when they initiated it. However, sometimes, you find some bad things in it and they throw the whole thing out, especially in a cash-strapped city, where I could see other entities eyeing up those funds and thinking that they might be otherwise used. I don't know if folks have any opinions on the fund in general or where it's at now, but yeah, don't have any action I necessarily want anybody to take other than maybe pay attention and see, because like I said, it is tied to the budget. And as we're talking about, hey, we might make a recommendation that the number of police officers should be 900. Well, how do we pay for that? So just wanted to share that there. Again, if anybody wants to know our work, I'm willing to share our work. But yeah, full stop.
That also federally funded?
I don't believe there was federal funds for that. I think it's city.
Okay, solely it was fully city funded.
Correct. And I know ours, initially there was another partner organization that kind of was a pass through. So like we got our funding from the Poise Foundation.
Yeah, they might have had several foundations chipping in and Poise being the, oversight. Thanks for the information.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I would reinforce what Mr. Robinson is reporting to you, that this effort for accountability for the funds that are dispersed by the Violence Fund, that's what council's going after. They had adopted some legislation a few years ago when they set it up, which was a controversial and a pretty innovative way of funding it as a percentage of the police budget, whatever it is that year, percentage goes to this other, which is also, I believe, funding the Office of Community Health and Safety.
Correct.
But they were looking for like data that shows what the work has produced. And I think, Mr. Robinson, your agency, you guys do wonderful work. I think they're targeting some of the pass-throughs that are maybe just not producing anything. They're not being effective and not following the reporting standards that were set forth a couple of years ago. That's their frustration. They're not getting any reports.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you. Any other new business before we move to case review? All right, hearing none, we have, I'm sorry.
Yeah, one last thing, and
Sure.
this will be a quick one. I don't know if you saw today, Miss Pittenger, Councilwoman Barb Warwick's introducing of legislation that would change sex work from a misdemeanor down to, I guess, to being a fine. If that was enacted, I guess my question is, how would that affect officers' operations as far as when they would have to interact with somebody who would potentially be charged with that, and would that conflict with state law? Out of curiosity, I don't know if you know.
Well, it may be similar to the marijuana. The change in the use of marijuana in the city being a citation as opposed to an arrest, all of that we went through. I don't really know. But it's a state crime. So I don't know how that would affect. Maybe our law enforcement professionals would have a better view on that.
I want to read what is being proposed. I'd have to get a look at that to see what it's about.
And this was one of them complicating things again, where there was legislation that was being introduced to try to limit enforcing of traffic citations.
Yeah.
And so we're going to run into this thing again where the city can tell its officers that it doesn't want it to enforce it, but why I'm questioning why we would handcuff police to uphold the law. So it's going to be one of them questions again, I think, coming back around.
Mm-hmm.
And it could potentially also affect the accreditation of the department. And that's the same exact issue that you just described, Mr. Williams, because of the expectation locally that you don't enforce something that is actually a state law. Then the officer is not holding, and they're in violation. And it's the same as the traffic stop one, the traffic law that they tried to change.
Yeah, I mean, she's just proposing this legislation. This has not passed. Is that right, Mr. Davis?
Yeah, no, it was just proposed legislation that she did today, but I was just curious how that, directly not only affects our officers, but just the entire setup of, I guess, to your point, I guess we would just continue, we would lose the accreditation, or have we? Because I wasn't around for the traffic citation, so I apologize.
Well, the officer would also be vulnerable to the certification, I think, could be challenged because he's not upholding the law. And that law that they're upholding is state statute, not the local thing. If they don't uphold an ordinance issue, that's between them and their department, basically. The state's not going to step in on that. But if you're not upholding the state laws, then you're not doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, it's that simple. If the state law says this, then that's what they're stuck with. Home rule charter home rule powers do not go to that level where it excuses or it allows for those things where the state supersedes, like public safety and the crimes code. The home rule doesn't have anything to do with any of that. So it's not like you can change the ordinance and that becomes like the rule. It doesn't necessarily, because we're still subordinate to the state legislature and their statutes. And I think that's the issue with the officer being sworn to uphold the law. If they're being told not to, then they have a dilemma. And then as you noted though, I mean, the department itself would lose accreditation. I think that's still up in the air because of that the traffic laws that they tried to change.
So that determination is still pending?
On the accreditation?
Yes, ma'am.
As far as I know.
Okay. Thank you.
Barb Warwick is my county council person, and I swear I get texts every day that she's putting new legislation in. And I think her record isn't really high of getting things passed, but that's just a side note on self-disclosure here. Alrighty, can we move to the case review? Everybody ready?
Yep.
Alrighty. So we have a total of 9 cases, 4 of them for full investigation, and they are case number 11025 ED 095-25. Hold on, I'm using my little clicker here. 089-25 ED, and the final one 08525. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
All right. One of you hold it for the next. Any discussion? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. We have 2 for a 30-day extension of the full investigation, and that's 04525 and 027-25. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank
Second.
you. A discussion? Questions? Hearing none? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. We have 1 case that was unfounded, and that's case number 109-25 ED. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. And then we have 1 that's an other, which is case number 079-25. May I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. And then our final case that we need to review is number 063-25. It's one that's asked to be suspended. They need more time.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Discussion? Vote, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. And then again, we have the 25 that are still out there with continued suspensions. Does anybody have any questions about those? We don't vote on those, so, just they were informational.
Madam Chair, you don't meet in August, and so that break will be another opportunity for investigators to clear many of those cases. So in September, you could expect to see some of them coming to be cleared.
Great, thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
All righty, so an announcement is our next meeting, which will be on July 22nd, as Beth just, announced that we don't meet in August. So our next one is July 22nd, and we'll be at the Jada House on 2nd Avenue in 15207, which is the Hazelwood area. So just as if you could mark that down, and if there's somebody that can't make it, then do we have options of remote there, Beth? Do we know? You're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yes, it'll be remote also.
Okay, thank you. All right. Do we have anybody wants to say something publicly? Do we have any public comment here? I'm looking here. I see a question. What's the address of Jada House? It is 4944 2nd Avenue, Pittsburgh, PA 15207. It's right on 2nd Avenue. going through Hazel?
Working in the back of the building too. So you don't
Thanks,
have to
Michelle.
park on the street.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, and then we have Mark and Trish. The Ozarks say hello and thank you for your work. Thank you, Mark and Trish. We can always count on you being supportive of us. Thank you. All right. I see no others. Steph, do you see any other venues?
I'm not sure who Axel Rose is. They have their hand up.
Okay. Do we want to let?
I
Axel, did
just
you wanna
unmuted Axel
Hello?
Rose.
Okay.
Hi,
Mr. King.
my apologies. My Zoom number has Axel Rose. That was my sommelier name. But my name is Matthew King. I've met with you board members before, previously on the 22nd, was with you previously on the 23rd. Let me make sure that I set my timer here so that I stay within the 3-minute guideline here. First thing that I wanted to give is I always love to give commendations. Commendation number one would be to Commander Hojas. So he's the commander for Zone 4. He was very cordial and polite in returning to me regarding an incident that I witnessed personally that I wasn't involved in, and took necessary steps to rectify that situation. So definitely wanted to give a recommendation there. The second would be that Miss Hampton and Miss Edwards are doing an extremely amazing and diligent job, and they have been an outsource for me and a way to, strengthen my side of what's been going on. I do have an update for the council members and do wish to I'd love to ask for your assistance or maybe point in the right direction. I spoke with Miss Hampton today. Unfortunately, I had another incident which Miss Edwards came to my took the report under recording, was absolutely wonderful and accommodating. And the incident occurred on Monday, June the 9th. Now, I have been charged again by Zone 6. It is involving the same Leetsdale police officer. I don't think that it's, constitutionally right to keep me away from a specific street. I did inform Miss Edwards that I was coming home from from a Pirate game. I got off it on Stevenson trolley stop and I went down a street to go home. This street does cross Mr. Schreckenghost's street. However, he took it upon himself after I was on a public street and I take video and photograph of his vehicles, which I'm in my constitutional rights to do so. And the reason for this was to secure either my apologies, because the city of Pittsburgh only does PFAs. It was either to secure a restraining order or a no contact order. Mr. Schreckenghost followed me and attacked me once again. He grabbed a hold of me. He acted in the color of law, threw me to the ground. I was actually on the phone with the Borough of Dormont emergency response line, which I was given to by the chief of police. I'm so thankful that they showed up first because they handled the situation much better than Zone 6. Mr. Schreckenghost illegally detained me, charged me for a crime, and then he called 911. Zone 6 did respond, and I guess to be clear and concise here, Officer Kenny, who in my previous incident, who charged me with trespassing that I was vindicated from, said that he was going to be putting out a warrant for my arrest. He did do so on the following Thursday. I turned myself in on Friday to the magistrate because it will go in front of the magistrate court. However, the charges that are here, the lead charge is section 182709.1A2, that is stalking. The second one is section 185506, loitering and prowling at nighttime. And the third one is section 182709A1, which is harassment. Now, my issue with these is that I did turn myself in. I did secure representation for this, but it's kind of goes back to the executive directors, the new recruits that are coming in being understaffed, and them also, not really understanding the laws that they're trying to enforce. And that goes to my direct point that in the criminal complaint that Miss Officer Kenny filed for the affidavit of probable cause for the warrant states that the source is presumed reliable, i.e. the borough police officer. So, and the only thing that I can think of is that he's, following a police officer, but that's speculation at this point. He also hand wrote on here that the source, which is Mr. Schreckenghost, has given information in the past which has led to arrest and or conviction, defendant's reputation for criminal activity. That's misinformation. I was never convicted. I was vindicated of my crime. And now Mr. Schreckenghost has caused me bodily harm a second time and come after me. And upon turning myself in on Friday, I was in front of the magistrate court in front of Judge Stevens, and he issued 3 conditionary measures. One, that I was to report in person to pretrial services, which I. Second was to have no contact with Mr. Sean Schreckenghost, to stay away from his property, which I have. And the third, to comply with outpatient mental health treatment, which I've been doing independently for the past 7 to 10 years, and I take daily action for those items. I don't see anything else here other than Zone 6 and Officer Kenny siding with another police officer on charges that I believe I'll be vindicated of once again. And I've been falsely imprisoned, my civil rights have been violated and or falsely arrested, and now I've been assaulted twice by this man. And I can't figure out a reason as to why, we can't just, as gentlemen, we live in extreme close proximity to each other, about 2.5 blocks away. There's only one main road, and the street he lives on is a no outlet street. And I brought that up to Judge. I understand that you're issuing a no contact order, but we live in such close proximity. Judge Stevens' recommendation was, if you see him, don't engage with him, don't do anything. And I understand that. But my reason for contacting Miss Hampton this morning, and I also informed the chief of police for Dormont Borough, my concern here is that I'm walking to and from work, to and from the gas station, and I have to wear a GoPro to protect myself. And last night, which I'm gathering evidence from Ring cameras in the neighborhood, I was up at the BP gas station. I was on my way home. Mr. Schreckenghost was coming up Potomac Avenue. He saw me. He literally turned around, followed me back down Potomac Avenue, where I ran to my home. And then after going down Potomac Avenue, he made a left on Crosby and went back around the block. I'm trying to avoid this man. And this man is following me around, and being in such close proximity, you know, I'm speaking to you now, and I apologize for going over the 3 minutes,
Yeah, I was
but
gonna say,
I
you've gone over your 3 minutes, so if you could wrap it up, would appreciate
yeah,
that.
I'm distressed. I'm in fear, and I've exhausted my resources here for crimes that I didn't commit. And anything for the board to help with, I would greatly appreciate. But I will say that Miss Hampton and Miss Edwards are doing a phenomenal job. But this situation's getting out of control.
Understand. Anybody have a response? We just say to you, follow the judge. My opinion here is just follow what the judge tells you to do and keep yourself safe.
That's what I will try to do. It's hard to do with, and especially Mrs. Edwards' main concern with her meeting with me is that this is somebody who is an officer, does have access to firearms, and I don't want to be a statistic on the news for walking up and down my public street that I need to get to and from work.
I understand that. Thanks for your information to us. And again, you have the staff there that if there's something that comes up, please reach out to us.
I appreciate that greatly. Thank you.
Okay.
My apologies for going over the 3 minutes. It's just this happened last evening, and it has me very shook that I'm literally walking around with a GoPro and recording glasses just to walk my dog, go to the trolley stop to go to work. This is not a way for me to be living.
Understand. Thank you. Again, thanks for your time today and letting us know what's going on. Board members, anybody have anything else?
No.
All right, so we are at 7:37. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make the
I'll make
motion.
a motion.
We got a 1 and a 2 there. Thank you so much. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I see you all in Hazelwood next month.